Good evening, friends. So we told you that this evening there was going to be Bhante Jayasara giving a talk, but we have still our favorite monk, Bhante Sudaso, but our other favorite monk, Bhante Jayasara, is actually here. Surprise!
Hello, everybody.
He will be silently not giving a talk this evening, but he will be loudly giving a talk in the next few days, coming soon.
Sure.
But for now, Bhante Sudaso will be leading chanting of the Ratana Sutta. And then after that, as usual, we will be meditating together for a period of time. And then Bhante Sudaso will be sharing some words of Dhamma on adhiṭṭhāna, determination. Okay. So welcome to Gita, Jens, who was also very well paired. He says, good evening, Bhante J, Ayasoma, Bhante Sudaso, and everyone. You already knew. Bradley, Ron, Einat, and Priyakant, good to see you. And welcome to everyone else that I don't see in the live chat, but I see you as a little number. All right, so we can start. Oh, I forgot. Hello, Gabriella, welcome. Yes, we're all happy and well. Hope you are happy and well as well. And let me put the link to the chanting. One second. Here we go. All right. So if you'd like to chant with us the Ratana Sutta, you can click on that link and follow along with us. All right. So I'll pass it on to Bhante Sudaso.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Yani bhutani samagatani bummani vayani vantarike. Sabeva bhuta sumana bhavantu atopi saka chasunantu bhasitam. Tasmahi bhutani sameta sabe vetam karota manusiya pajaya. Devacharato chaharanti evalim tasmahi nera katapamata. Yam kinchiritam yidavahuram vasake suvayam ratanam panitam. Nano samamati tathagatena idampi buddhe ratanam panitam. Etena sachena suvati hotu. Kayam viragam amatam panitam yadajjaga sakyamuni samahito. Natena dhammena samati kinchi idampi dhamme ratanam panitam. Etena sachena suvati hotu. Yam buddha seto parivannai suchim samadhimanam harikanyamahu. Samadhina tena samona vijjati dampi dhamme ratanam panitam. Etena sachena suvati hotu. Ye bhugala tasatam pasata chatari tani yugani honti. Te dakineya sugata sasavaka ete sudimnani mahabbalani. Edampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Yesu payuta manasa dalhena nikamino gotamasasanamhi. Te patipata matam vigaiha ladhamudhanim butim punjamana. Vedampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Yatinna kilo patavim sitosiya chatu bivate diya sampakampiyo. Tatu pamam sapurisam vadami yo arya sacchani avechapasati. Edampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Ye arya sacchani vibhavayanti gambhira panyena sudesitani. Kenjapi te yonti busapamata nate bhavam matamam adiyanti. Edampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Sahava sadasana sampadaya tayasu dhamma jahita bhavanti. Sakaya deti vichikichitancha silabatam vapi yadati kinchi. Chaduhapaye hicha vipamuto chachabhitanani avavokatum. Idampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Kinchapi sokam mam karoti papakam kayena vacha udacetasa va. Ababbo sota sapatichadaya ababbatadittapadasabhuta. Edampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Vanapagumbe yata busita ge gimhanamase patamasmin gimhe. Tadupamam dhammavaram madesayi nibbanagamim paramam hitaya. Idampi buddhe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Varo varanyo varado varaharo anutaro dhammavaram madesayi. Idampi buddhe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Khinam puranam navam nati sambhavam virata citta yatike bhavasmi. Te khina bija virodhi chandani banti dhira yathayam kalipo. Idampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu. Yani dabhutani samagatani bhummani vayani vantalike. Tathagatam devamanusapujitam buddham namassama suvati hotu. Yani dabhutani samagatani bhummani vayani vantalike. Tathagatam devamanusapujitam dhammam namassama suvati hotu. Yani dabhutani samagatani bhummani vayani vantalike. Tathagatam Devamanusapujitam Sangham Namassama Subhati Hotu Etena Sachavajjena Dukkhavupasamintu Te Etena Sachavajjena Bhayavupasamintu Te Etena Sachavajjena Rogavupasamintu Te. So please go ahead and get in meditation posture, and we'll do some meditation practice. So you can sit in the full lotus position, or in the half lotus position, or the quarter lotus position, or the zero lotus position, or the kneeling position, or the chair position, or the standing position, roughly in that order of preference. So do the best you can. And taking a little bit of time to really make sure your legs are positioned in such a way that they're not going to fall asleep during the meditation. Making sure there's no pressure anywhere, especially around the upper thighs and around the ankles. Those are the two main culprits for legs falling asleep. Make sure there's no pressure on those parts of the body. You can lean forward a little bit and then slowly let your spine straighten up. This helps to get a slight forward tilt for the pelvis, which supports an upright position and also minimizes leg falling asleep. Bring shoulders up, sweep them back, and let them just drip down your back. Bringing the hands together, resting lightly in your lap, with the thumb tips just barely touching. You can have your eyes either closed or half open and pointed down about 1 meter in front of you, 1 or 2 meters. And make a firm determination to let the body be still for the whole period of meditation. And take a few long, slow, deep breaths. With each breath, letting the body settle into position, releasing all the tension in your muscles, letting the posture itself hold the body upright without any muscle power needed. And also with each long, slow breath, relaxing the mind, as if the breath was sweeping out all the extra thoughts and noise from the mind. And bring attention into your body, clearly feeling the whole body all at once. With intensity and clarity. Making this the single most important task imaginable. To feel the body with utmost precision in each moment. And without moving attention through the body, just resting the center of the mind at the center of mass. So, which is about where your hands are resting in your lap or in your abdomen. Just using that point as the center point for attention. Not allowing the mind to drift from that area. Keep focusing on the body. With every breath, feeling the body more and more intensely. And as the awareness becomes more intense, more powerful, make sure the body remains relaxed, especially making sure the face remains relaxed, soft, gentle. So a feeling of lightness and ease accompanies this powerful attention. enjoying intense awareness of the body. Feeling the body ever more intensely, clearly, and joyfully with each passing moment. Like a light bulb gradually growing brighter and brighter. Relax your posture.
Great. Thank you, Bhante, for guiding us in meditation, even though you're suffering of allergies. And welcome to Ethan, Kevin, Elaine, Lilia, Rich, and Stacy. Welcome. And Gabriela has a question already, which is great. So if you have questions, you can put them on the live chat and we'll get to them after the talk. All right. And hello to Marielle and Jacqueline. Okay, I'll pass it on to Bhante.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Well, good evening, friends. Happy that you're joining us again. So we're continuing our series on the 10 parami, and today we're up to number 8, which is adhiṭṭhāna in Pali. The word adhiṭṭhāna has the prefix adhi, which means superior or higher or extreme. Its meaning overlaps a bit with the prefixes abhi, such as with Dhamma and abhinya, and also with the prefix ati, which means extreme or excessive. So adhi has both a positive sense of something which is higher or superior or best or better, but also a less positive sense of meaning excessive or extreme. So this word adhiṭṭhāna in the suttas most commonly is used in a negative sense to mean stubbornness or mental rigidity, mental inflexibility. For example, being rigidly stuck on a particular opinion or viewpoint, being unwilling to see things in a different way or consider another way of looking at or doing things. So in the suttas, the word adhiṭṭhāna usually has a negative meaning. But in the time after the Buddha, the word adhiṭṭhāna started to more and more commonly be used in a very positive way, of referring to one's ability to set resolutions for oneself, to determine a particular course of action for oneself and to stick to it. So especially in monastic circles, the word adhiṭṭhāna is most commonly used in this positive way of making resolutions. Quite similar to New Year's resolutions. So commonly every year, on December 31st or January 1st, people will make a resolution about something they want to do during that new year. So maybe a resolution like, I'm going to go to the gym for 1 hour once a week. Or a resolution, I'm going to stop eating Cheetos or whatever. I haven't had Cheetos in about 15 years now, and that's one thing I don't miss. And similarly, in monasteries, people will commonly make resolutions, such as, I'm not going to eat any desserts for 1 week. That's not so difficult here at Empty Cloud Monastery, where we rarely have desserts of any sort. So commonly we'll go for a week without desserts just as a matter of course. But in many, if not most, Theravada monasteries, where people are commonly donating all kinds of food, often there's a lot of temptation, a lot of sweet sugary things which aren't necessarily so good for one, but which are tempting. So there was one monk at Abhayagiri where I spent the bulk of my training as a junior monastic. There was one monk there who was always making resolutions for himself, and especially resolutions around food. So again, resolutions like not to eat any desserts for a week, or resolutions to pause for a second before saying anything, which was a big one for him because that particular monk was prone to running at the mouth and just blurting out whatever random thing popped into his head, which caused a lot of problems for him. So making that resolution to pause for a moment before speaking was something that was very helpful for him. That particular monk also was strongly prone to greed, especially craving for food. So making that resolution of not eating desserts for a week was also very potent for him. So these are simple examples of making determinations which are meant to help one control one's defilements. One of the ways that one then can apply adhiṭṭhāna, this power of resolution or determination, is to look at one's defilements, look at one's tendencies, and to make a determination which goes against those defilements. And a few pointers around making resolutions or determinations. One, start small. If we start off with too big, too difficult of a resolution, we'll probably fail. And then we'll feel bad about it, and we'll be less likely to make more resolutions, or we'll start to lose faith in our own willpower. So start small. Start with something reasonable that you know you can do. And second, similarly, set a clear time limit for how long you're going to be following the resolution. And that time limit should also be short. So instead of saying, I'm not going to eat desserts for the rest of my life, instead, I'm not going to eat desserts for 1 week. And if even that sounds like too much, how about 1 day? For 24 hours, I won't eat any desserts. How's that? Can you pull that off? And if you think that's something that you stand a 99% chance of succeeding at, then you can go ahead and make that resolution. Or a very common one that I recommend when people are starting off a meditation practice is to make a resolution like, I will meditate 10 minutes a day for the next week. So it's a small amount, 10 minutes a day, and a small period of time, 1 week. So starting off with a very reasonable, easy to do resolution. And once you make that resolution, you stick with it no matter what. You stick with it to the end. And then after you've successfully completed a short, easy resolution, then you can increase it a little bit. Do something a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult for you, or doing it for a little bit longer of a period of time. So the monk I mentioned, he started off with not eating any sugary foods for 1 week. And he went off and on this for a while, but then he went up to doing it for 1 month. And then he went up to doing it for 1 year. And then after he'd been a monk for about 5 years, then he made the determination. He was like, I think at this point I'm ready to determine not to eat sugary things for 5 years. But he didn't start off with that. He started off with 1 week. But building up that power of resolution, that power of determination, he got to a point where he realized, I can do this. I can decide what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. So this can be a very powerful way of getting control over our defilements, building up our self-confidence in our ability to control our defilements, our ability to counteract our defilements. our ability to determine what we do. So commonly people say they feel powerless over their habits, powerless over their tendencies and predilections. So through this practice of resolution, we start to build up the ability to go against our habits, the ability to start to rewire our tendencies of mind, and our self-confidence that we have the capability, our self-confidence that we really do have the ability to override our patterns, to change the patterns of mind. And most importantly, to shift from unwholesome patterns to wholesome ones. So this power of determination, it's also something that, again, it can be applied for almost anything. So one resolution that I highly recommend making is at the start of every meditation period to resolve to be still, to sit still for the whole period of time. So I commonly mention this as part of meditation instructions. But even if I don't mention it, I recommend you do it anyway. And also in your daily meditation practice, because of course you have a daily meditation practice. If you don't, it's time to make a resolution to meditate every day for a week. And once again, pick a time limit that works for you, whether it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, whatever works for you. And stick with it. But then at the beginning of each meditation period, making that determination, that resolution, I will not move until the end of the period of meditation. And this is really powerful. This is really potent, especially for the cultivation of samadhi. That resolution of not moving the body for a whole period of meditation builds up a sense of stability in the mind. It builds up a sense of focus, of imperturbability in the mind. So making that resolution and really sticking with it. Whenever you feel inclined to move your body during meditation, you remember, no, I made a resolution not to move, so I'm not going to move. So I admit I didn't quite stick to it during this meditation because my nose has been acting up from allergies. So I made a little exception. I'm not going to move except when my nose starts dripping and I need to get a tissue. So I did put a single exception clause for myself. So if you have a good reason to include an exception clause in your resolution, do so right from the start. But not incorporating them along the way. It's like, I vow not to eat any sweets for the next week. And then the next day there's strawberry cheesecake. And you're like, except when there's strawberry cheesecake. And the next day there's vanilla ice cream. And you're like, or except when there's vanilla ice cream. I think that's a good exception too. And then the next day, except when there's chocolate. And you're like, yeah, exceptions for chocolate also make a lot of sense. And then the week goes by and you realize that you actually totally failed. You just wound up with 7 days of exceptions. So that's, of course, not particularly helpful. So if there's certain exceptions to your resolution, include them at the beginning. Because effectively what you're doing is you're making a contract with yourself. You're making an agreement with yourself. So if you cheat on the contract, you're cheating yourself. Why would you do that? Why would we cheat ourselves? We make an agreement with ourselves in good faith out of a genuine intention to help us progress more swiftly towards enlightenment. Why would we cheat on that? That would just be crazy. Of course, we're crazy though, so it's not surprising that we do these things from time to time. But really trying to take our resolution seriously because it's building up that power to decide what we do and to do it. And this becomes a power the more we build it. Because it can get to a point where we can make even very difficult resolutions for ourselves, but because we've built up the power of self-determination, then we stick with it. So an example of the power of resolution. So I sometimes tell the story of Ajahn Jayasaro, and I usually tell this as an example of what not to do, but in this case, I'm bringing it forward as something inspiring. So Ajahn Jayasaro, when Ajahn Chah was severely ill and was about to die, looked like he only had a few days left to live, Ajahn Jayasaro made the determination, I will not lie down at night. I will do the practice of sitting in meditation all night from now until when Ajahn Chah passes away. Seemed like a reasonable thing because it was only going to be a few days. To the surprise of the doctors, Ajahn Chah lived for another 7 years. However, Ajahn Jayasaro had made a determination, and he was not going to break his determination. So for 7 years, he did not lie down once. For 7 years, he sat up in meditation all night. For 7 years. Injured his spine in the process, by the way. So this is why I normally hold it up as an example of not such a great way to practice, because that's an example of making a resolution for too long a period of time. In this case, the error was making an indeterminate time length. He thought it was only going to be a few days, but the wording of the resolution wound up making it several years. That was not so good. But the inspiring thing about the story was that he stuck with it. He was like, yeah, it was kind of a bad idea to have an indeterminate time length, but I made a resolution and I do not break these resolutions. So that quality of willpower, of self-determination, of being able to say, I am going to do this, and then we do it. This is something which is a very powerful force in our practice. To be able to make a resolution like, I will not utter harsh words, and then actually to stay with that. Or just in our meditation practice, you make a resolution like, I am going to keep my attention in my body. Well, if you've built up the power of resolution, the power of determination, the power of self-will through various small determinations that we've made and kept, then when you make a determination like, for this period of meditation, I'm not going to move my mind from my body, then you might actually stick with it. So you're applying that power of self-determination to keep your mind fixated on the meditation object. So this is a very powerful support to our meditation practice as we build up this ability of determination, this ability of resolution. So again, this is a practice which we can take on. So starting in small ways. So don't start with really difficult things. Start with very small, easy things for short periods of time. And then gradually increase. And reflect, what are my areas of defilement? What are my areas where I'm most prone to error? What are the areas where I fall into unwholesome actions, speech, or deeds, or thoughts? What are the areas where I need to start improving my practice? And make a resolution that is related to that. A resolution which in some way helps to address or reduce some of one's defiled tendencies. And once again, once you make a resolution, do not back down from it no matter what. Stick with it. So this kind of firm resolution is necessary if we want to have any hope of attaining awakening. An example of this is the night of the Buddha's enlightenment. So before the Buddha attained enlightenment, He could feel that he was getting close, that he was getting close to a breakthrough. So when he sat down in meditation at the beginning of that final night, he made a very strong determination, a very strong resolution. He resolved, even if my blood and muscles dry up and wither away and nothing is left but skin and bones, I will not get up from this seat until I attain awakening. So very strong resolution. The resolution that he would not budge from that spot until he attained awakening. Even if his body was dying from starvation and dehydration, he would not move from that spot until he attained full awakening. So very powerful resolution, and not one to use lightly. But it's a resolution which one is capable of making if one has made easier resolutions for a long period of time, built up that power of willpower and determination, and when one knows the time is right. A simpler resolution, which is not quite so extreme, is something like doing a 3-hour period of sitting meditation and making the resolution, I will not get up from my seat until the timer goes off after the end of the 3 hours. Simple resolution. For that practice, if you've never done it before, I do not recommend resolving to hold still. Just resolve not to get up. You can adjust your posture as much as you like during those 3 hours, as long as you don't get up from your seat. So there, again, it's a strong determination. If you've never done this before, resolving to sit for 3 hours is a strong determination. So you soften it a little bit by saying, I won't get up for 3 hours, but I can adjust my posture if I need to. So that softens it a little bit. And after you've successfully done this many, many times, then you might resolve not to move during those 3 hours. That makes it a much stronger resolution. But you don't start that way. That would be too much. Again, this is a practice which I highly recommend starting to incorporate into your life. And use it as a vehicle for building up your willpower, building up your self-confidence, and for slowly chipping away at your defilements. So again, this is a practice which is very common in monasteries, but which I've never heard anybody talk about outside of monasteries. And I don't understand why this isn't discussed, because it's a very powerful way of training the mind. So I think that's all I really have to say on the subject. I think I've said more than enough. So at this time, if you have any questions or comments, please enter them in the live chat and I'll answer them as best I can.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante, for sharing words of Dhamma. There's already quite a lot of questions and comments. And Bradley said, 3-hour sitting meditation, also known as the New Year's Eve Retreat 2018-2019.
That is commonly a feature of our New Year's retreats, yes?
Yeah, that's the first retreat I think he came to. Let me scroll all the way up.
For the record, everyone that I've ever gotten to do our 3-hour sit always says afterwards that it was amazing. Torturous,
yeah.
But amazing. There was one young man I know who said that he never realized how powerful samadhi could be until the first time he did a 3-hour sitting period.
Yeah, and our friend May
does them every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, she's incredible. Gabriella asks, I have read previously that the 4 foundations of parami culminate into the 4 adhiṭṭhāna. Upasama-ditthāna, Chaga-ditthāna, Satcha-ditthāna, Panya-ditthāna, but I also explored the idea that there were more determinations that were also important and connected with practicing the Bodhipakkhya Dhamma. what are some other determinations we can make that would be productive to the development of the path? And what are examples of determinations you have made? It's a lot of questions.
I think I covered that during the talk. Yeah, so I think we've already covered that subject.
All right. And Maria says, so I have been a little bit of a Buddhist even before knowing Buddhism. That's very likely. Normally, when we encounter Buddhism, it's because we've had previous karma.
Yeah.
I have been vegetarian for the last 8 years, and I knew since I was little I was going to be one. I have spent hours taking a cockroach out of my room so to not kill. In other words, I take seriously the not harming other beings by my own judgment, and not because anybody taught me to be like that or a religion imposed it upon me. However, while meditating, I imagined I had a huge saber. Saber? What is a saber?
A slightly curved sword.
Oh, interesting. I had a huge saber and I kind of used it to cut across a specific person I'm angry at, and it felt amazing. Whoops. I wouldn't be able to do it in person. However, I cannot lie. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed crossing his head over and over again. Also because the person never really died, but it felt good to take an action on my anger, at least on my imagination. Any thoughts? Is it so bad to make unwholesome actions in our imagination?
Yes, that's really bad. Don't do it ever again. No, I'm sorry, Marielle, but no, you cannot attack people with swords in your imagination, no matter how much you dislike them. So no, that is not acceptable. I mean, it's adorable, but it's not acceptable. So our thoughts become our deeds. So this is how it starts. You start by thinking about attacking a person with a sword. And the more you think about that, and the more you revel in it, and the more you enjoy thinking about it, the more likely it is that eventually you will actually do something like that. Because what you're doing is you're telling yourself that it's okay to hurt other people. That's what you're doing. Every time you think these thoughts, you're telling yourself that it's okay to hurt other people. As long as you have a good reason for it, of course. But still, that's what you're doing. You're telling yourself it's okay to hurt people. You do not want to build that up in your mind. So no, it's not okay to visualize attacking people with swords. I mean, bonus points for creativity, but still, no.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So, I mean, I was listening to a psychologist recently who confirmed something that I suspected. Basically, he said that every one of us has had some kind of an impulse or a vision come to our mind of killing somebody. And what would be the distinction between having, that impulse, the impulse comes to the saber that you must like this. What would be the difference in your mind from having that impulse rather, as opposed to indulging in that impulse? Like, it's not like having the impulse. How much, the only reason I ask is because it's kind of, I don't think it's skillful if somebody kind of bashes themselves over the head that they have this impulse that arises. It's like, oh, you're really bad.
That's an important distinction. So it's the distinction between a unintentional arising of a mind object versus the intentional cultivation of a mind object. So if, as you're sitting there, an image of attacking this person with a sword just happens to pop into your mind all by itself, that's not inherently unwholesome. That's just a mind object appearing. If you then recognize that is an unwholesome line of thought, I will not engage in it further, then that's a wholesome activity. But if you then think, oh yeah, that person really deserves it, I would love to take a sword and start jabbing them, oh yes, then that's an unwholesome response to that mind object. And if you then start playing out the scenario and you're like, Yes, the sword would be 3 feet long, and I would take it in both hands, and I would bring it back, and I would swing, and the blood would spray on the walls. Then that's definitely unwholesome.
I guess that qualifies in I enjoyed crossing his head over and over again.
Yes, so that's definitely not wholesome. So when images and thoughts like that appear in the mind, then if it's happening involuntarily, then we just recognize that is an involuntary mental object, and I will not participate in it because it is unwholesome. It is nourishing hostility, it is nourishing violence, it leads to unwholesome results. I will not participate.
Wow, there's some amusing comments on Bante's face. Bradley says, I had to go back and look at the reply of Bante's face. And Maya says, it was only once during meditation, okay, but okay. I will not feed that seed.
This is surprising because you're such a nice person in real life. Like, I just cannot imagine you taking a sword and attacking somebody.
Yes.
So now that I'm thinking about it, now I have images in my mind. But let's not make those images real.
Yeah, she says, I do have to mention I used to practice fencing, and saber was my weapon. It wasn't so much imagination. But yes, I will not nourish it again. Brava. Again. So Victor asks, Victor asks, when we do adhiṭṭhāna for 8 sila, so I assume the determination for the 8 precepts, can we listen to chanting? Is chanting during the 8 precepts considered listening to music?
It depends on what the recording is. But generally speaking, if it's just chanting, I don't see anything wrong with that. But if you go on, if you search online, you can find lots of times when people have taken Buddhist chanting and put it to music. That I think is maybe not so great. It's better than listening to secular music, but it's still not the best. Best is just plain chanting without musical accompaniment.
And Marielle also asks, but wasn't there a Buddha that was all bones because he didn't move, and then once he had his first bite, he realized the extremes are not good and that the middle way is the way?
I mean, Shakyamuni, before he attained awakening, he did go through a period of time when he was practicing extreme asceticism and became skin and bones. So extremely emaciated, almost to the point of death. And he realized that wasn't helpful. So that's a form of a resolution on something which is not actually wholesome, which is not actually beneficial. So adhiṭṭhāna itself is neither good nor bad. It can be used either for wholesome or unwholesome things. So it's the ability to determine what you're going to do and to stick with that determination. But you might make a bad determination. A thought that comes to mind was there was an order of knights in medieval Europe, which they all together made the resolution that they would never retreat from battle. And so they were all wiped out. They all died in one battle. And that was the end of that order of knights. So that's an example of a not very smart resolution. So resolutions can be good or bad. But the ability to make a resolution and stick to it is extremely powerful in our practice if we turn it towards the wholesome, if we turn it towards cultivating the path to awakening.
And Victor also asks, I did adhiṭṭhāna to do 30 minutes every night, I think, of meditation, but I don't set the time. Is that wrong?
It's not necessarily wrong, but I do highly recommend setting a timer because otherwise we tend to look at the clock too much. So when you set a timer, then you just don't have to think about the time, and you can focus all your attention just on doing the meditation. And so then your resolution is, I will not get up until the timer goes off. And I also recommend, if you're going to do that, you can add in a resolution, and I will not check the time until the timer goes off. Because then you don't have anything to worry about. You can just do your meditation, and you know that when the time is up, the timer will go off and you can stop. So that, again, the timer helps a lot. It's not critical, but it helps a lot. Okay?
Bradley says, in regards to the 3-hour meditation of the New Year's Eve retreat, it was actually amazing. I never knew I had it in me. And Jen shares that I made a resolution to myself years ago to never make resolutions again. Now, what do I do? I've never kept one, and they only make me feel horrible.
Well, you've put yourself in a bit of a quandary there, because if you start making resolutions again, then that means breaking your last resolution. But yeah, realistically, you actually make resolutions all the time. You just don't think of them in that way, but you make them all the time. Every time you tell yourself, I am going to do XYZ, that's a resolution. So you wake up in the morning and you think, I am going to get up and go have breakfast. That's a resolution. And then you do it. So actually, you're making resolutions all the time. You're just not thinking of them in that way. So again, as far as making resolutions and then breaking them and feeling bad about yourself, well, perhaps that's because you made resolutions that were too difficult for you. This is why I was emphasizing making small resolutions for short periods of time. So ask yourself, what's a resolution that I can actually reasonably hold up? If you're used to, for example, eating a bag of Cheetos every day, I don't know why I'm talking about Cheetos tonight. I don't even like Cheetos. Let's imagine you have a habit of eating a bag of Cheetos every day. Well, then a simple resolution is, I will not eat Cheetos for one day. For the next 24 hours, I will not eat even a single Cheeto. For just one day. Not the rest of your life, not the rest of the year, not a month, not even a week. Just one day. And then for that one day, you don't eat any Cheetos. And at the end of that day, as you're ravenously scarfing down a bag of Cheetos after having finished your 24-hour fast, then you can reflect, oh, I actually was able to keep my resolution that time. Maybe next time I'll go for 25 hours without Cheetos, or even 26 hours. So then you slowly build up, but it's starting small. This is really important. This is also kind of the stereotype with New Year's resolutions, is that January 1st, people are like, okay, for this year, I will do whatever. And it lasts for a couple weeks, and then they break it, and they're like, oh, well, so much for that. And they give up. Well, that's because they made the error of setting too long of a time limit. A year is a really long time if you're not used to making resolutions. If you make the resolution for 1 week, oh, that's much more doable. Or even 1 day, that's much more doable. It's like, I can do 1 day. 1 day is not so big. Okay.
And Bradley says, in Anguttara Nikaya 4115 talks about 4 things. Things that are 1, pleasant to do but unbeneficial, 2, pleasant but beneficial, 3, unpleasant and unbeneficial, and 4, unpleasant but beneficial. Especially when overcoming my defilements, they tend to be unpleasant. How to work up the determination to stick with it even when it's hard?
Cultivate an appreciation for the pleasure of serenity, the pleasure of equanimity, the pleasure of an unshakable mind. And recognize that when you make a resolution, that you're building up that equanimity, you're building up that serenity, which means you're building up the accompanying happiness, the accompanying pleasure. That's one recommendation I would make.
And Gabriela says, I will try as hard as I can to make a determination to truly and completely relax without words in my head for 3 hours. That's great. Sadhu. One second.
You might want to start with a shorter time limit. 3 hours is a long time.
Oh. And Kevin is encouraging people to practice Dhamma, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So if you would like to, and you can support the monastery, you can go on buddhistinsights.com/donate. Thank you, Kevin, for your heart of generosity and kindness. And Gabriela says, I asked earlier a second question and got lost in the swords. Okay, let me look up. Oh, yes, that's right. Sorry about that. So the second question that Gabriela asked him, it was in between Marielle's amusing sword question.
See, now I have this image in my mind of like Marielle with a sword.
Yes.
Which I've never had before this evening.
Me neither.
I don't think you ever met her.
No, but considering I also trained with swords, I like her already.
Well, she's this like really sweet, very friendly, kind young lady. And I couldn't imagine her attacking someone with a sword.
Yeah. So Gabriel asks, what are some beneficial determinations we could make as laymen that monastics cannot make? Well, Bhante hasn't been a layperson in quite some time, so.
Yeah, I'm not really sure I'm the best person to ask that.
Celibacy. Celibacy as a layperson. At least for some periods of time.
Yeah, periods. Yeah, celibacy for periods of time. That's an interesting one.
I mean, we can make it as monastics, but we also have to.
It's kind of by default, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, just look at your life and decide what are some small short-term changes you can make that will reduce your defilements, and make those resolutions. So I mentioned food because that's something where most people have a fair amount of defilements. Actually, Victor mentioned the 8 precepts. So periodically taking the 8 precepts for a day is a form of adhiṭṭhāna. It's a form of taking resolutions. But yeah, look at your life. Look to see, where do your defilements manifest in your life? And ask yourself, what are some small resolution? What's a small resolution I can make that will counteract those defilements a little bit? So that's a question you need to ask yourself. In monastic life, it's fairly easy because we have very few ways to get in trouble. So food is one of the main avenues for expressing defilements in monastic life because it's one of the few options that we have. Speech is another one because, once again, it's one of the few options we have. As a layperson, you have a lot more options for expressing your defilements and a lot more options which are socially acceptable, but which are contrary to Dharma. So those are areas where making resolutions is a very potent way of controlling your mind, getting some control over the mind.
Gabriela says, I hate eating issues. So that's an apply.
Okay, so then actually an interesting resolution around food. I heard of one monk, I never actually met him, but I heard of one monk who he was chronically underweight and had a lot of health problems from not eating enough. And so the resolution he made was, whenever he was eating food, to view it as an act of metta for himself. And after that, he found it was easier for him to eat enough. So it helped to overcome his negativity towards food. Okay.
And Ethan suggests a layperson could make determinations around the use of money.
You could, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good
Such as
suggestion.
buying less stuff.
Whoa, Gabriela says, I skip meals regularly. I got an ulcer one time. Then you should definitely follow Bante's suggestion.
Yeah, have metta for yourself. Yeah.
Food with metta.
Yeah.
Great. I'd like a side of metta. Metta's a first course with a side of metta. And Bradley also says, sometimes even just keeping the 5 precepts is hard. That's why you need to ordain Bante, future Bante Bradley. And Bradley was also sharing, every now and then when I set a timer, my mind is like, but what if the battery died? Just have a peek. The mind is so devious. Or maybe it's Mara, the evil one.
Well, if the battery dies and you wind up meditating for 3 hours straight, wouldn't that be wonderful? I actually remember this when I was very early in my meditation practice. And I'd started with 10 or 15 minutes a day, and I was gradually building up. And I got to the point where I was doing 30 minutes a day. And then one day I sat down to start meditating, and I hadn't actually set the timer. And I wound up sitting for close to an hour. And I finally stopped because I was experiencing a lot of leg pain, and I was like, this is unusual. And I checked the timer, and I was like, oh, wow. I just sat for 50-some minutes. And it wasn't a big deal. So that was a sudden leap in realizing that I could actually meditate for a lot longer than I thought I could. So worst case scenario, the battery actually does die, and you wind up meditating for a lot longer than you think you can. And eventually you'll come to a point where, for one reason or another, you'll stop what you're doing. For example, you might desperately need to use the toilet, in which case you'll get up and use the toilet and then realize that you just sat for 3 hours instead of 30 minutes. And won't that be wonderful? Yeah, so don't worry about it. Again, it's just your mind making excuses usually. If you're really worried about it, then set 2 timers simultaneously. Because the odds of both of them failing at the same time is extremely low.
And Jens says, Bante, to reinforce our determinations, should we spend time, a period of reflection on the pleasantness after meeting each resolution?
Sure. Yeah, if you like, if that helps. Yeah. Yeah. Rejoice in your triumph. Rejoice in your achievement. Rejoice in your victory. It's like, yes, I successfully completed a determination. Go me. I am awesome. Sure. Yeah. Because that can help build up that positive association with making and keeping determinations.
All right. And Ron is also happy about the suggestion of making determinations around the use of money. And Gabriela says, I'll do my best. 5 precepts aren't too hard. Only one of 5 is hard. The lying precept's the hardest one, but the rest isn't hard at all. And Jen says, the swearing one is the hardest for me.
Yeah, everybody has their own difficult one. So commonly I hear people say that the 5th precept is the hard one. So I'm happy that's not a problem for you. Yeah, everybody, they have their pet defilements, the things that they like to do. So we need to become familiar with what our primary defilements are, and work to counteract those as much as we can.
All right. And I think that's all for this evening. Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And, oh, actually, no. Whenever I say that's all for this evening, then something pops up. So Gabriella asks, why alcohol and intoxicants are gross and ruin my samadhi? Actually, it was not a question, it was a comment. So yeah, well done.
Because they're also fun. So that tends to be why a lot of people have a hard time giving them up. So yeah, as your practice develops, then you recognize how intoxicants harm your sati, weaken your mindfulness, weaken your samadhi, weaken your equanimity, weaken your self-restraint, weaken your wisdom. But when one's practice is not well developed, then that's not so apparent. Instead, one tends to fixate on the pleasantness of intoxicants and overlook their drawbacks. Yeah, so it's not surprising to me that that's a hard one for many people. But yeah, you're correct. As your practice develops, you gain an appreciation for a clear mind. You gain a real strong appreciation for the precision of a sober mind.
All right, so yeah, we can all cultivate the happiness of a sober mind. It's actually quite great. We can all have a great, as we say, here at BI. And tomorrow we will be studying another parami, the parami of metta, the ninth parami of metta. And there will be special monk star Bhante Jayasara, who will be sharing thoughts on metta tomorrow evening. But tomorrow morning we'll be back with Bhante Sudaso for Sutta study. So we'll meet you in less than 12 hours with another episode of BNN with Bhante Sudaso. All right, may you all be happy and peaceful, and may all beings attain awakening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.